So I would like to begin by saying living a life of faith is not for the timid. A life of faith demands things of us. Demands that we look beyond ourselves and seek to encourage and include all in the circle of our love and our concern. We are to look for the spiritual wanderers, the refugees, the homeless, the slaves, the oppressed, and even the oppressors, and love them like the kinfolk or the family that they are. Love them enough to even change the structures in which we live so that they are not left to fend for themselves on the edges of our society. Now this is hard and demanding work, and it can seem to be endless work too, since we live in a time where there is no shortage of wanderers and oppressed and oppressors. Truly, we do not suffer a shortage of things, good and noble things, that demand our attention, our love, and our action. So living a life of faith is not for the timid. It is for the bold and the loving. It is for people who have a heart to wade into that chaos of life, and once in that swirling chaos, to love amid all of that, to love amid all of the confusion and all of the chaos. Jesus was pretty clear on what the purpose of faith was. Faith is the vehicle by which all will have life. Faith is the vehicle by which all will have life, and abundant life at that. In the United Church, we have a heart for this kind of faith in action. The United Church was born out of the social gospel movement, and we have sought throughout our history to look beyond ourselves and to raise up the concerns of the hurting and to raise up the concerns of the marginalized. And time and again, we as a denomination have stepped out boldly to try to right a social wrong. And sometimes it goes well for us, and sometimes it's just awkward and painful, and we all throw up our hands and go, oh my goodness, what just happened? But we still do it. And for that, I am justifiably proud to be a part of this church, to be a part of this denomination. We are a very faithful bunch of doers in the world. We do, and we do, and we do. I was just at a 2-day church meeting in Vancouver, and we do, and we do. We fill flip charts. Yet there is profound wisdom amidst all of this doing, and really good work that we are called to do. There is profound wisdom in taking periodic breaks from all of our good and noble work out there. Take a break and simply be. Because if we don't take the occasional break, we can and do often lose a healthy perspective on things. The first thing that goes when you don't take enough breaks is the why of it all. Why are we doing this? You know, the first thing that goes is the why. And when that happens, our good works become to-do lists. And then the people that we seek to love and enfold and lift up simply become pawns, or not pawns, but people that we do things for as a part of the whole. So when we lose the why, we lose perspective on what we're doing these things for. Our good works become tedious to-do lists as opposed to being faithful ways we respond to the cries of the world that Jesus encouraged us to do. And when we lose sight of the reason why we do anything, faith is lost, right? God is often lost, and our worldview becomes way too small when we lose sight of the why we are doing this. Our worldview becomes so small and becomes too easily divided into the good and the bad and the ugly, instead of the holistic whole that the Spirit is trying to transform. The second thing that goes is the personal grounding in our faith, that deep well of meaning that sustains and renews lose us. We lose the feeling that connection with God. We lose who we are in some sense, and how God is with us in deep and very real ways. And when we lose that grounding, our hearts can break, and we for sure become burned out. Jesus knew the importance of the why we do things as a people of faith. He was always very clear that his actions were about bringing life to all, especially the wanderers and the oppressed and the hurting, which, by the way, is sometimes us. It's not always the other people, but all of those were to experience life. That's what Jesus came for. And so the why of his work, he always named as part of God's plan for healing and reconciling of all the people and all of the peoples of the world. That's why he came, and that's what he taught. And Jesus also knew the importance of taking the time to be personally grounded in faith, personally grounded in that relationship with God. Jesus was always going off to pray and meditate. It caused his disciples no end of concern because he didn't always stick to the agenda, right? He was going off and taking that time to pray and to meditate, to reconnect with that inner part of himself, heart and soul part, where he felt his deepest connection to the Holy. And so this is where our gospel reading comes in. In our reading today, we heard how Jesus, right after his baptism and filled with the Holy Spirit, goes out into the wilderness for 40 days and comes to terms with who he is and what he is being called by God to do. Now we hear how he is tempted to take an easier path to achieve success in his ministry. We hear how he is tempted to use his own gifts and personal power to raise himself to positions of political power. We hear how he is tempted to give in to the short-sighted demands of his people who wanted a Messiah who came with an army and ready to overthrow Rome. Instead, one who came with a will to teach us how to love one another and how to heal the world and ourselves. Very big choice to make. Am I this? Am I that? That was his question in the wilderness. The 40 days in the wilderness was a time of reconnection, a time where Jesus sought to reconnect with God and the why of it all. And he knew that you can't reconnect to the deep well of life and meaning that exists within if we don't take the time to pause and reflect and seek the wisdom of the Spirit. So today is the first Sunday of Lent, and it's our invitation to take some time to pause and reflect and seek the wisdom of the Spirit. It's a 40-day stretch of time where we are encouraged to spend a little time in the wilderness, a little time on our own heart and soul search, a time where we are intentional about figuring out what is truly important in our lives and separating that from the distractions and the fluff that seem to coincide with so much of our daily living. Now, the season of Lent is a personal journey. Only you can make the trip. Only you can discern what is truly important in your life. The only thing that I can tell you is that the journey is so very worthwhile. If you're willing to strap on your walking shoes and journey through the wilderness of big questions, you'll eventually discover a land of deep meaning, and that land isn't very far away, right? A place in your own heart and soul where life becomes more than you could have ever imagined, and in which you will feel like you have come home. This is a lovely connection to the Deuteronomy reading, this sense of coming home. And that's what connects the gospel story to the Deuteronomy, the sense of home. I absolutely love the reading from Deuteronomy that we often hear at Thanksgiving. It's kind of weird to hear it on the first Sunday of Lent. But it's an important story. I especially love the line, "A wandering Aramean was my ancestor." These opening words, which essentially set up a liturgical or a worship practice were spoken by Moses towards the end of the time of wandering in the desert. So just picture it. The people of God were about to enter the promised land. And so this liturgy, this worship was to help them to remember their history, help them to remember their sacred story, help them to remember their place in that story. The people had been nomads, resident aliens, slaves, refugees, and even oppressors at times. Yet their journey through the wilderness had brought them to this place that they could now call home. One of the reasons I like this line, the wandering Aramean was my ancestor, is I can't help but think about who that guy was, or who that woman was. What must it have taken for that person to leave the comfort and the security of what was known and comfortable and set out for that journey through the wilderness in the hopes that they would arrive at a better place, that they would arrive at a better land. I often wonder, what did they learn as they traveled, and who went with them, and most intriguing for me, what did they pack? Right? I overpacked at Mexico. I had to haul that suitcase, and it was like way heavy. So what did they pack? What did they have to leave behind as they set out on their journey? And it seems to me these are the heart and soul questions that we might ask ourselves during Lent. What are the truly important things that we need to keep with us so that we might journey through the wilderness and find our home? And what are the things that we maybe need to leave behind? To grow spiritually, we often have to leave the place where what is known, right? That comfortable place. That place where easy answers and big distractions keep us from our soul work. And as we grow and change and experience the wonders of our world, we are changed. And how we understand God changes too. And that's the way it's always been. And I love that connection with that wandering Aramean. That as you go and journey and travel through life, you are changed. And that helps you find home. The wandering Aramean with his wanderings, Moses with his encounter with God in the burning bush, Jesus in the wilderness, all had this time of soul searching and time of rediscovery of what truly matters in this world and who we are and how we fit. A time where they discovered things about themselves, and a time where they saw God maybe in a different way. But this rediscovering of the holy in life isn't limited to the famous and great ancestors of the faith. It's an opportunity and an experience that is given to every single one of us, and it is a gift. It's given to every one of us. And it's an opportunity to do the spiritual work so that we might live in the land, that spiritual land of deep meaning, that land that is filled with abundance and love and joy and all the things that make life living worthwhile. So Lent, this Sunday as we start, Lent is a time to put our spiritual shoes on and hit the road. It's time to put our spiritual shoes on and walk. Lent is a time we go into the exciting and the wild places so that we might eventually find our own promised land. And in so doing, find our home. May it be so in your life and in mine.